Beardy and the Beast Media Club.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Thank you for joining us at the Beardy and the Beast Media Club, a full spoiler podcast into a piece of media. We won't check out of these spoilers like hotels or existing relationships. If you enjoy what we do, give a like or a share, and join the discussion in the comments or at our Discord. My name is Drew, and joining us in this cramped elevator, Devon.
Man, it is cramped. At least I'm taller than everyone.
Today we'll be discussing 2003's comedy drama Lost in Translation. So Devon, was this piece best hearts or did it leave you feeling sorry?
Man, I do appreciate you coming up with these puns. It's the reason why you do these intros and not me. This is probably one of my favorite movies.
That's
And and I figured that might be where you went with it.
I just I know the things that you like and the media that you like, and this, it's just, I don't get it. So maybe through this you can explain it to me, because like I know that you were a study of Lost in Translation.
Yeah. It has definitely been a while since I've watched it, but like rewatching it, I don't know, it's very understated. You know, it's definitely not the most actiony in any way, but I find that they do so well at setting up the isolation, the reasons for both Charlotte and Bob's isolations, even though they're different, goes very well at setting them up, and the emotions that come across through their interactions always feels very strong to me, and gives a lot of meaning within that. So through its understatedness, it has a lot of impact.
And I think from my point of view, that was, aside from like a few of the more humorous segments, that's the only positive that I
Mhm.
really saw in this film. And it's the one thing that I noticed almost immediately was showcasing the isolation of the two and then contrasting them towards each other.
Yeah.
Like and like even like revisiting scenes from the different perspectives, like the cab scene.
Mhm.
Whereas I don't even know the name of the characters. Whereas Bob Harris, Bill Murray, was in the cab and looking at the scrolling like busy cityscape, it felt like he was alone and it was caging him in.
Mhm.
When they revisit that with ScarJo, Scarlett, didn't even know her name, just like trapped in their um the actor and actress. Um, that same isolation was there, but the city itself wasn't caging for her. Instead, it
Mhm.
looked like something that she wanted to experience, but um, she was being stopped in a way of experiencing it how she wanted to.
Yeah, and like I think they did that very well. So the way that I looked at it is they were both very isolated, but for different reasons. Like Bob's character almost wanted to be isolated a bit. Like,
Hmm.
like he very much had that I want to be alone. I'm doing this to get away from my wife for a bit, um, and you kind of see that in the way he interacts with the people around him. Whereas Charlotte was lonely, so one was alone, the other was lonely,
Hmm.
and I think. you see that in a lot of the scenes with Charlotte, where she clearly wanted to experience it. She was going like where I watch her going in the film when she's by herself are the places that I would want to go if I was in Japan to experience it. I would love to see one of those large arcades. Love to go to Kyoto, go to the shrines. Um, and she was very much trying to experience that, but the loneliness kicked in, and I think that's why you get her saying she went to the shrine and didn't feel anything. Uh,
That's
and I
that's
think they
a
painted that very well.
it's another comparison that I did enjoy. Um, Comparing Bob's interactions with the Japanese culture versus Charlotte's. So Bob
Mhm.
was inconvenienced, and it didn't seem to mesh and didn't seem to be something he was enjoying. Whereas on the
Yeah.
other side, you had Charlotte, who was interested and in some cases, I wouldn't say enamored, but she was feeling something through it.
Mhm. Or she wanted to experience something through it at the very least. Even if she didn't quite understand it, like the flower setting, for example. Right? She just goes in and just kind of participates.
Well, it seemed like she was interested and she was there,
Yeah.
experiencing it, and she wanted to.
Mhm.
Whereas if you put Bob in that same circumstance, it would have seemed more of a chore to him.
Yeah.
So just like kind of a story of two, I wouldn't call them parallel lives because the reason for their experiences and the reason for their loneliness were completely different.
Yeah.
So similar, I guess you could say. Two people in a similar point at a time coincidentally meeting each other.
Yeah. And there's something about that that felt very natural to me.
Mm.
And I think that's part of it too. Apparently a lot of the dialogue was ad-libbed between them.
Which is
They had the
hilarious
general ideas.
because there was an award for best writing.
Yeah.
So like how much is that campaigning and shilling? The award.
Mm.
Because I have no problem with the dialogue.
Yeah.
In fact, some of my favorite parts of the piece were from the obvious ad-libbed dialogue.
Mhm.
Like the waiting room scene in the hospital and during the Centauri ad.
Yeah.
You could see the actors around them like struggling to hold in their laughter, and they
Yeah.
just like leave these scenes in, and that got me
Yeah.
laughing. Like the old man dressed like dressed like a hoodlum, just
Yeah.
like making random noises and whatnot, and like saying things, and obviously Bill doesn't understand. There's these two
Yeah.
ladies behind him, and they like it's obvious they're
Just try.
supposed to look like sad or concerned, but they can't not laugh.
Yeah.
Then there was
But I
the
mean,
people in the background at the Centauri ad thing.
yeah. I mean, even again, that's honestly something like I honestly think that's somewhat natural too. And you're in a situation like that and just this seems so absurd, right? Even as a if you were just a if you were part of the background and you see that, I can
Mm,
see that getting a chuckle.
no,
No?
if I thought there was any type of intention behind it,
Hmm.
I'd give it to you. But it's clear. It's just
Hmm.
like I don't know this for certain, but I bet you that that old man is probably like a Japanese comedian, somebody who's so
Could be.
um
Could be.
having that interaction. Like
Yeah.
I don't think the director went, okay, you in the background, like start.
No, and I saw they didn't do that. But I don't disagree with them necessarily having to reshoot it because it was happening.
I guess I don't know.
Right. Like it's
I
a
I
minor. everything.
Yeah, like it's just one of the funny moments that I enjoyed.
Yeah, yeah. One of the scenes that I actually really liked with just the natural dialogue was the scene with where Bob and Charlotte just kind of talk while falling asleep.
Mm.
Like just that sleepy conversation. It's like I remember having sleepy conversations like that, which is you might say a word or two and as you're
Mm.
drifting off. Like it's stuff like that that make me really enjoy the film.
I felt like it was the awkwardness that you would expect to go away after they had, communicated and started having experiences, and the dialogue, like, it never stopped. It remained being that kind of first interaction awkwardness. There's something missing there from.
You got to remember, it's only the entire film one takes place in a couple days.
Yeah, but it had that first
Um,
conversation. The thing that snuck up
mm,
on me and left a distaste in my mouth was the started after the lounge singer. Um, after Bill Murray had slept with the lounge singer, which I mean, given his character, I'm like, okay, whatever. Or he
yeah,
does that. But the fact that it seemed to come out of nowhere that Charlotte was all of a sudden like jealous and making comments indicating like a why not me kind of situation, and I'm like, there was nothing that was omitted during this entire movie to me that there was a type of romance subplot.
and I definitely agree with that. I think I wonder if some of that is that um, just one character reading it one way and the other reading it completely different. Like she was clearly, oh, it's not enamored, but I could see where she might misread it, especially where she's feeling so isolated from her husband and just finding that meaning and putting too much into that meaning is kind of how I read that.
Yeah, that's reading pretty deep into it, and I mean, like, I can see where that comes from. I'm just like, I would have if that wasn't there, this movie would have went from like to what, that was all right. Like
Yeah.
that would have increased the quality if there was uh no kisses, no suggestion of the possible romance. Because what I saw, it was two lonely hearts in like a budding great friendship. I think that would
Hmm.
have been a much more solid movie. Like
Yeah.
the romance subplot came so out of nowhere for me that felt included because you have to have something like that in a drama.
Yeah. So, from what I understand of the film, like, I mean, the kind of like super awkward kissing goodbye in the elevator. That I'm not sure how that one fit in. I know the kiss at the end was ad libbed. I don't necessarily think I don't know if that added or
Individually, a great scene, but
Mhm.
in the context of the movie,
Yeah,
I detested it. I didn't think it had a place.
yeah, yeah. That I agree with.
It's
Kind of the
like
awkward kiss thing. I think didn't bother me too much because now they're both like, okay, well maybe there is some feelings here. Let's test it out. And I thought that awkwardness kind of showed that no, it doesn't work. Like that's how I read that part.
see if that was a third of the way through the movie,
Hmm.
awkward kiss to a like nah, and then
Yeah.
it continued as was. I actually probably would have given lots of points,
Hmm.
but it's just like it didn't feel forced. It just didn't feel like it was.
Yeah. Well, here's a I'm not sure if this adjusts that a little bit. If it was a third of the way through the movie, like you're saying, that would be when they just, like, literally just met. Like, they don't
Oh,
talk for the first third of the film.
okay. Well, you know what I mean though.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
somewhere in the like introduction before the midpoint, there's
yeah.
like a is there a romance thing here? I wouldn't say I was completely absorbed in the film, but the parts that I was finding like attractive in the piece and that were drawing me in was what we discussed already and both agreed upon,
Yeah.
which was like the two lonely hearts
Yeah.
and the converging of them, essentially
Mhm.
finding a like a part of your soul as you're what at a point in time.
Yeah.
And I wish they had like stuck to that
Mhm.
opposed to like trying to like weirdly complicate it with a romance thing that just like didn't jive with me.
Yeah. So I got 2 points that I'm gonna spring off from that. Um, one is in complete agreement with you. I think it's very important to be able to portray that that type of bond where it's is it definitely part of your soul, definitely someone that needs to be in your life, but that doesn't need to be romantic.
Mhm.
Um, like the best friends, right?
Exactly.
Like I look at that type of relationships like I know like gonna praise you for a sec. Like
Well,
you're
don't do
someone
it.
that I want. Well, you're someone that's important. Like we play off well off each other. We build each other up, right? Like, and that's that strong friendship that they could have left it there.
Mhm.
Part of the random romance part, I think, because this was somewhat autobiographical
Mm.
for Sophia Coppola with Charlotte and John, was it? Um, yeah, John, um, representing her and Spike Jones.
Mm.
So, like the breaking apart, like that interaction between those two characters was supposed to be for them, and it makes me wonder: is like, okay, was this some sort of catalyst that she had that that caused them to split apart, and that's why it was there, even though it wasn't necessarily the main focus. It was definitely part of what happened, and could be added in the film because of that. It may have well been a spontaneous type thing. As you said, there's not a romantic subplot, but what if it's because, let's say, Charlotte didn't see it as that way either until she saw Bob sleeping with the lounge singer, and that sparked something in her.
Oh, to be like, oh, is this a possibility?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just,
right.
I
And
mean,
it might not have ever been there before.
from like a psychological standpoint, I
Mhm.
I could see that being a potential, but
Yeah,
then again, like applying a hypothetical to a character's motivations, like I'm guilty of it too.
yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's close enough to be a gimme.
Mhm.
It's weird. It's weird this movie because like the things that it does well, it does exceedingly well.
Mhm.
But I think everything, in my point of view, it falls short. Um, it's like having Charlotte, a mediocrely written character with questionable motivations being expressed so well. You gotta give that to ScarJo's acting
Mhm.
because if we break this down, we have a dude who's super busy working, has to like constantly work when they're out of like visiting out of country to get things done. Of course, he doesn't have time, and she's sitting here. Of course, she like needs attention, but we have this Ivy League philosophy student who's going like, pay attention to me, like, don't go to work right now. Got to
Yeah.
like the actual situations when you write it down on paper compared to that guy come off as um like self-centered and hoity. However, because of the great acting, you got that loneliness.
Mhm.
Like you can even put aside like the weird motivations of how the character was written because they were expressed so well.
Yeah.
Like ScarJo was definitely the right choice for Charlotte, and I
Yes.
definitely give Bill Murray. Like I love when comedians act serious. I know I don't think there's many actors or actresses like even over the last like 30 years that you could put in a room and say, we're going to film you for 30 minutes, act as lonely as possible without crying, and
Yeah.
have them be able to pull it off. Because you could see
Yeah.
it in every little gaze and everything.
Yeah.
If we compare the motivations and like the structure on paper to Bob, the self-imposed loneliness, like the
Mhm.
way that was structured seemed a lot more concrete and made more sense from an outside look.
Yeah.
Now I know that I'm discounting like internal emotions when it comes to Charlotte, and that's where ScarJo's expression reigns supreme. Because you know how it's one thing, like I can tell you something and you'll express something back, but I don't know what your internal emotions are.
Yeah.
So like I'm fine can mean I'm totally not fine, and it can also mean like, yeah, I'm pretty okay. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. So we don't see those interactions when it comes to how Charlotte is. Like everything of that level is expressed through the acting.
Mhm.
And this is like, I mean, I love ScarJo. I think she's a great
Yeah.
actress.
Oh, completely. One thing I think that, from what I'm picking from you, where you didn't like it, it's funnily enough one of the things that I normally bring in a lot more
Mm.
is just the plot, the way the pieces are moving scene to scene,
Hmm.
and I'm picking up that like that's where you're finding the weakness in the film overall,
Yes.
and I think this is where this is what I love this movie is even though I know that's there, I never saw this as a movie about the plot. To me, the movie's always been about the emotion.
Mm.
And because that's expressed so well in these basically, vignettes essentially, we're just seeing these people through these snippets over the course of a week. And all of that is done so well that even though the storyline isn't the best, I found the emotional storyline was solid.
Hmm.
And and that's what I think draws me to it. Because all I need to do is get absorbed in the emotions of it, and it lets you appreciate. And that's part of what makes me appreciate the humor. I almost see it more as an existential movie. And I mean, even though it's a Coppola that did this, it's still considered an indie film. It's got that very indie feel.
See, and this is where this is one of the pieces where it doesn't it's not cohesive to me,
Mm,
because that indie film though was great at expressing the emotions and loneliness. I'll fully give you that. Um,
yeah.
it also, the fact that it lost track of its point story wise, going from like this like weird lonely together friendship into like this weird romance thing that though was a very tiny part of the film was so awkward that it's just like this glaring lighthouse in the dark. Um,
Mm,
the fact that it didn't just go with that original, have it be about that, is what's very surprising to me.
mm.
So like, it's kind of like 10 points to Gryffindor and minus 10 points from Hufflepuff here. um, um, and it's the only thing that's keeping it afloat is the emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that's fair. And yeah, it's just as I said, it's one of those weird ones where yeah, I could kind of throw away the rest of that because I just got lost in the emotion of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And just that, I think I wrote down it's like finding meaning in that loneliness
Yeah.
and finding meaning with someone else there.
I'm wondering also like if there's like a an emotional resonance based on, say, when you first watch this, that's kind of lingering. Like if I watched this, say, 2 years ago in the
Mm,
like the middle lockdowns where I can't see family, I can't see friends, all it is uh, fear in video games or whatever, and that's all I have. Like, would I see this movie from a different light?
Mm,
And I think that's very possible.
yeah.
Like having that resonance, but this being my first watch, like I didn't have any tinges of that.
Mm,
So I think that's where the weakness lies, without it being kind of shaded by emotional resonance or identification to the film.
right.
All I see is where it fails or where um I get caught up on little things, the kitty bracelets of the film.
Yeah. Uh, well, and that's an interesting point too, because like the situation time's one thing, but also watching it knowing you're going to be reviewing it, does
Mm-hmm.
that also take away from that too? Because we talked about that with other movies where it's like, I can't remember which one. It's just listening to all of them, but where we said it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm reviewing this and I can tell it's changing how I'm watching it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I
So
like this is the first film where I was actually bored at a point.
mm,
And I mean,
okay,
we've definitely watched some like longer films, less eventful films
yeah.
when it came to like an overarching. I mean, Earwig, absolutely nothing happened. Uh, but I had that moment. I was just like sitting there staring at the film, and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually bored right now.
Mm,
Um, and I think that was right around because there's a lull in the emotion
yeah.
about 2/3 of the way
Mm,
during that, and it's probably where you would normally see like a climax in the film.
yeah.
It's interesting that there didn't seem to be a peak like that. More of like a drawn out plateau of the two people being lonely together.
Yeah.
Which thematically, like I really like that concept. Just don't like how it was expressed during like the final act, I guess you could say.
Yeah. No, then that's definitely fair. Just trying to think. So that would be. So I'm just trying to think of the that's in the film. That'd be just before slept with the lounge singer. I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's just like there's a section like I'd feel bad like if you go and watch this again in the future and be like, oh, I see Butcher's. Like I hope I'm the weird one out.
Hmm,
I saw the audience scores of this and it's quite well loved.
yeah.
And I'm sitting here
See,
and I'm like, I hope I'm the crazy one.
well, I'm trying to place. I'm trying to place exact times. I'm wondering if it's part of the emotional story that didn't resonate
Mm,
and felt bored. Because again, we're not looking at a plot to keep us interested, right? It's literally the emotion. So if we get into this spot where that's falling apart for you or something, I could see that, or you're not connecting to that emotional storytelling.
mhm.
I'm wondering if that's what essentially pulled you out.
I think that might be where like so the conflict in the emotional storyline is this wonky romance thing.
Mm,
So it essentially comes like, oh no, why and it's like a 30-second conflict. It's like,
yeah.
oh, why not me? Have this awkward lunch, and then there's a fire alarm, and it's like it's okay as it's gonna get.
Mm,
Like it's weirdly structured that way. So I guess like kind of putting it together. Sleeping with the lounge singer, though I'm not surprised the character would do it, I didn't see anything to the film at all. Except to bring in the emotional conflict, which I don't like anyways.
yeah. Well, again, I think that's viewing it slightly differently. So let me let me step back for a second, kind of
Mm,
going around this point here. So you've already talked about how they stay awkward throughout.
mm,
I think there's a few reasons around the awkwardness as I'm
Like the time
following
gating
that.
suggestion makes sense for me. Give you that.
Yeah. So we've got the time gating. We've got the age difference. We've got like a lot of their interaction, or a good chunk of their interaction before, wasn't them directly interacting. It was, Bob going with Charlotte to her friends. So you kind of get that isolation, that awkwardness around that again.
See, and not to derail this, but that was a series of good scenes that showed the like alone together.
Yeah.
He's there and he's participating, but he's still alone.
Yeah.
And
But through that, you still had Charlotte. Even though it wasn't explicitly stated, there was something there. You kind of see it in the way that she would glance at him, like in the karaoke scene. It is one spot that I noticed where it's like kind of like she's paying a little more attention than I'd expect for just friends. It's very subtle. They don't say anything, of course, which leads to they essentially, air quotes, they sleep in the same bed.
well, that's like it's like Dawson's Creek, like we're just friends moment to me, and like my view might be painted by the Dawson's Creek, like wouldn't it be weird if we had sex conversation?
Yeah. And I think that's what. Right, so we go from there. So we see that obviously there's that comfort there. To the next emotional beat being him sleeping with the lounge singer. And I've seen this in real life where it's like, oh, you see someone's attracted to someone else, and now all of a sudden you realize how attracted you were to them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you get that awkward argument over lunch. Right into the, okay, let's see if there's something here. Clearly there wasn't.
Oh,
And
I do like the
right?
inverse of that, which is the I don't want to be with you, but I don't want anyone else to be with you either.
Yeah.
Like that weird paradigm. I just want to throw that out.
Yeah.
That's also a fun paradigm to play with in film.
Yeah. And like most of that there, it's so following that as the emotional storyline, the only part that really breaks that for me is again that kiss at the end. Because all of the awkwardness was gone there. And that was the issue.
But again, great scene. Out of
Great
context.
scene.
Out of context.
Yes, out of context. And like I almost wonder if there was no kiss and there was just kind of the hug and the bit of a whisper that you see and just left it there, would the awkward romance have left as bad a taste in your mouth?
I would just like if we're to throw this on the smallest changes possible, say sleep with or kiss earlier or just remove that elevator scene.
Yeah.
I was hoping the conflict would end up coming like it's obvious that Charlotte wants to be with John, but they are apart. I think a lot of it has to do with his over dedication to his job and her codependency issues. I was hoping that the emotional conflict would end up being that John finds out about Bob, misassumes the nature of the relationship. Because there was a lot of conversations during this where Charlotte seemed to be inquiring how to make things work and how things should be or what she can do in her relationship. It's just like these weird emotional beats. And this is why I open it like I don't get it.
So this is where I see that. So I see the emotional conflict, or I picked up on a different emotional conflict than you. Like kind of like it's very similar to what you're saying there
Mhm.
with the clearly Charlotte wants to be with John. I'm going to change that slightly. Charlotte wants to be with past John.
I'd counter that.
She's talking. She talks about, even one of the first scenes. She talks about how this isn't the person I married with. He's using hair products and doing all of this stuff.
I guess like I'd like to expand upon that. Not just past John, but the idea of John.
Yes.
Which she has as the paramount identity of John in her head. Not exactly the past, but definitely not.
Yes.
It's technically what you're saying, but more expressive.
Yeah. More all encompassing.
Yeah. I can see all the reasons why you would love this movie.
Mhm.
Just don't get it.
Yeah, no,
Because like it's
and
I think my problem is it's definitely not the Little Hours paradigm.
yeah.
But this is more of a case of like having everything and just not having it work specifically. I get why people would love this movie. I get why the score is high. I get why it would, well, I mean, I think reward shows are a joke, except for the BatB Awards. um, and I definitely like if I were to put on my dev shaded glasses, I could definitely see like a point in time where this would just resonate so well. Telling you, no, I'm not going to Scarborough Fair.
Oh. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
and you know, and it's funny because like as I was rewatching it, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, no, this is not going to be like what you're saying is almost exactly what I figured. How I figured this would actually hit with you.
well, obviously, like Caveman Drew needs Spooderman. Where's Spooderman? He swing in, he fight crime.
Yeah, I don't. And it's funny because like none of the stuff you're saying I can really disagree with. It just doesn't
Well,
never
that's
entered my head about it, right? It's
that's the thing. Like this actually goes fully back to what you were saying earlier. Like experiencing, because you don't watch an emotional experience, an emotional story.
yeah.
Um, so we had two completely different viewing of the exact same film because you were experiencing the emotional storyline, where I was sitting here going like, that's cool. Oh, that's funny. Um, I enjoy this part. It's like weird that there's a stripper scene here. Uh, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like on the upside, I wasn't glad that it was over. I was just like, it was an adequate meal.
Yeah.
Build
That's
something, but um, I think narrowing it down to the elevator scene is probably the most accurate thing, because had it just cut out that end, especially when the emotional conflict had resolved and they had gone back to um more of the friendship, lonely together aspect,
yeah.
the entire film would be about the incidental meeting of two lonely, but instead it ended up being about finding something and leaving a piece of something,
Mm.
is the way I view it. So it's just like, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
thematically it was off-putting that way.
Mm. I mean, they straight up say they straight up do say that they found something and left something in Japan. Like there's that line about let's never come back to Japan again. It'll never be the same. It'll never be as much fun. Right. So completely agree that that's there. As I said, yeah, for me it's the final kiss, not the awkward ones. Because sure, whatever, test the waters didn't work. Um,
Wait, was
hmm.
there another kiss?
The
There's a
kiss right at the end of the film.
there's two elevator kiss. Wasn't it just a hug?
No, Should have been.
I mean, it definitely should have just been a hug.
No, they kiss.
It's like 456, get on that damn plane.
Yeah. Like that's really, yeah, that's the part that made it worse for me. It was just funny because someone else I was watching the film with someone else, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad they did that." I'm like, "You're wrong," but
Yeah,
I get it.
You're wrong, and you're a bad person.
No, I can't say they're a bad person.
I can. I dislike
No,
everyone.
you can't. Oh, I think some of it too is like, I don't know. We keep going back to this. Clearly, I'm the 17-year-old girl. Because I felt a connection with the way ScarJo was, like with her character throughout this. Like I've
like you were able to like project upon.
yeah, like I've been that person who is lonely in a crowd,
Mhm.
right? Even though you're surrounded by friends, you're just kind of like, none of this conversation means anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I loved that with the rapper going on describing what he's gonna do, just like, see what I mean? She's like, no, just that deadpan no leaves. Like, I connected there.
See, and that scene specifically, and this is what bugged me about the writing of the character, goes back to the conversation she had with John, where John called her out for like, why do you got to be sarcastic about everything and talk down?
Mm.
So that's like gave me this weird like, oh, she's like a Ivy League, philosophy student that just looks down upon the people around her. Like there was this weird, but I get what you're saying. Like when it comes to me in the crowd, it's my perspective is like I don't care.
Yeah.
It's not so much of this conversation doesn't mean anything. It's just like I'm not emotionally bonded to any of this interaction.
Yeah.
Like, for me, like I have very specific people in my life that I invest any type of emotion into. And there's like 5 of them, you being one of them, so it's kind of so and maybe that's where it's falling apart for me, because if I was projecting myself into that situation, what I would want from that experience is like, again, that two lonely hearts intersecting and then leaving,
Mm.
and just having that have been an experience.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. Say if you were in this similar type situation, like just the whole fish out of water aspect, would, I guess not a question. Well, I get the impression you would be closer to the way Bob reacts in the film. Would you agree with that? Like he's kind of there. He's kind of like, yeah, I'm not in, like the disinterested.
Well, not especially, because there was parts about Bob that I just like really old, like tropey things about the character itself. It's like what I wrote down here. Oh, Westerner struggling with Japanese shower. Much funny. It's just like just weird, like old tropes about like, oh, Westerners don't know anything about Japan. Isn't this like a thing that's going on right now? And I'm just like, this is like, maybe in the late 80s you could get away with this character trope. Uh no, I didn't identify with Bob either.
Okay.
Because like he was intentionally pushing away the people he was supposed to care about, and
yeah, that's fair.
had no interest in the environment that he was in. Like, especially if he's trying to escape, you figure he would try to push himself in like try to at least pretend to show interest in what was going around instead of just being disrespectful to like the Japanese people that are all standing around him, trying to like dote on him. I would say I would definitely identify more from that interaction with Charlotte, but not her motivations. Like I think your expression why you identify with Charlotte is probably the most accurate representation of Charlotte's state.
Yeah.
And her attitude. But I'm definitely closer to Charlotte than
okay.
Or Bob.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Like I couldn't project on the characters. And that's, I mean, good storytelling. You shouldn't have to, but when the storytelling falls short, the next way to find enjoyment is by bringing out something or someone you can project.
Yeah, I guess where it's it's not exactly traditional storytelling.
Yes,
I think is a good way to say it. One thing I was thinking, because you mentioned where with John and Charlie going, why do you always have to be so mean or sarcastic type thing? It's one of those things that points to the past John that she fell in love with that's missing. Because she kind of infers that he was kind of more punk rock and would have been that sarcastic guy as well.
But given her attitude and her wanting to hold on to the past like that, I actually put old John as being more like the asshat hipster who just says dick things and says like, "Oh ho, aren't I funny because I so clever?" Instead of the punk rock, like, I don't give a crap, I'll be sarcastic because there's different intention there. And this is, I think,
that
where
probably fits a bit better, actually.
And honestly, like the only problems I have with the character of Charlotte are probably the parts that are probably autobiographical. Like the self-imprint of the writer onto the character are probably the things that I don't like about it. But again, like ScarJo's fantastic acting is totally what gave that character any meaning.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair.
It's so dumb because I want to like this movie.
Yeah.
And again, this is kind of like this is almost antithetical to the position you were in with The Little Hours, where there was nothing redeeming for you. But this one only has redeeming factors, but it's still just like, it doesn't click. And I guess what I'm saying when I say I don't get it is like, I don't get it emotionally. Like I'm not there for that emotional voyage. Experience that. I guess like, I guess I'm on that emotional roller coaster. I'm not this emotional to ride, you know. I mean, like, I guess you know me, like I can be very disconnected about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's only until late when I'm sitting here and like being like, you know what, I kind of want kids, that I've like been expressing emotion.
Yeah. And like I said, it's one of those things. Like I kind of realized that that's kind of everything you said about the films. Pretty much like nothing you're saying is shocking me. It's all like, no, all of this makes.
Well, I'm not even shitting on the film.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, and that's exactly what I figured you would be. It's like I figured, like, I just get the impression it's like this movie is middling for you. It's not bad. It's not good. Like it's good, but just missing that right part. And everything you're saying is exactly where I thought you were going to be with.
Which is so funny during that intro, and I'm like, oh, well, that's tragic or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, I thought you might say that, and I'm like, oh, unpredictable. Need Spooderman. The
Um, oh,
I do I do
yeah.
I do really like how they expressed the various like other culturalisms and like very
Mhm.
unique like persisting Japaneseisms, like actually still having arcades and like young adults being interested in them. Like
Yeah.
um, they even did the traditional. We're doing a movie in Japan with the like weird crosswalk, but they did
Yeah.
it in such a way where they weren't even on it. They just like were passing by it. They were actually running through the cars.
So, fun fact about that.
Hmm.
They didn't have permission to shoot there.
Oh. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense then.
Yeah, apparently there was a bunch of places like they just didn't have permission to like, well, we're all getting arrested.
It's just like if I were to take like kind of the old school, who isn't it funny that a Westerner can't adapt to like Japanese cultural things, or like Japanese showers, or I think that the way that they expressed experiencing Japan is probably closer to what a regular person would actually experience it at.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, oh, you check out like a Japanese lounge, you go to a cultural site, you spend way too much time, but not enough time in your hotel. Like that is
Yeah.
an actual trip. Actually, seemed expressed well. It was almost like I wouldn't be surprised if this was written, if she wrote this by like going to Japan for a few days, and then
Yeah.
this was actually structured similar to some of the stuff that she was doing.
Yeah.
You're gonna do that. You're like when you arrive in a place, tired or jet lagged or something, so you're like hotel restaurant or or hotel lounge, and you kind of do that, and you're bored for the first 24 hours because you
Yeah.
start experiencing it through that.
Yeah, I wonder how much she did. So I know that she storyboarded the film through pictures. So she did go there and basically take pictures of how she wanted the shots to look. So
Probably
it,
like
it does actually
brushed
sound like
aside
you
her
were
eme
suggesting.
over and busted out the crayons.
Yeah.
That's a very dickish way of saying the movie was actually very simple in that aspect.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Um, no, but I mean it's true. It's fair. It was simple in that aspect.
Well, it was supposed to be emotionally complex, right? Like I'll give it that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's, I just keep coming back to the thing, though, like the stuff that I think it did well, it did. It's like to the point where I can't even give it an arbitrary rating. I can't say 8 10 cats or two out of 5 blue hearts.
Yeah. I, I get the feeling you would rate this like I could see you almost struggling with rating this like some film that may or may not be mentioned at some point.
Maybe, but for completely different reasons.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean that the film that shall not be named is revolutionary, like in so many ways. I just really don't like, mostly because
Yeah.
it's just long.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like Ghost in the Shell. There's just so much talking. It did.
Yeah.
Like
No, yeah, I just mean that the complexity in trying to figure out how to rate it, not obviously for different reasons. Be crazy if it was for the same reasons.
yeah, and this, no, I just like I can't express it
Yeah.
because of the lack of emotional connection. I'm just like that's a film.
Yeah.
I neither liked nor disliked it.
Yeah. No,
And
that
that doesn't
is
mean it's a 50%.
yeah.
It, that means it just can't be rated.
Yeah. Well,
How many blue hearts would you give it?
well, I was gonna say that I'd probably spend 5.5 days out of the week with the film.
Ah,
It's
You know what? I would have thought you would have went 6.
you calling attention to some of the plot details.
No.
Guys, unfortunately, knocked it down just a little bit. Just that half day, just that day that I'm jet lagged, or that part of the day I'm jet lagged.
And that's the worst part of every trip, right? You got to
Yeah.
get rid of that part.
Yeah.
Put this on the must watch.
Yes.
Straight up saying like I neither like nor dislike this movie, and people will be like, "What are you talking about? Shut up, Drew." And I'd be like, "Not everything's about me, just most things. The world revolves around me."
I think the big thing, like, and you've expressed this very well, even though the movie didn't do it for you, it's very clear that you appreciate what it's doing, right? So, like, I mean, we've all seen movies like that, like where there's movies that absolutely has to be on a must-watch list. Never going to watch it again, right?
Yeah, and
Or
unfortunately, when they make a movie that has a emotional framework where the character is disinterested, doesn't care about what's going on, and gets frustrated easily, it's generally about a serial killer. So I'm not saying I'm a serial killer. I'm just saying that my emotional phenotype is not expressed well in movies.
Yeah. You're not a 17-year-old girl. Yeah, no, that's completely fair. Here's a question then. Have you seen her?
No.
Okay. Well, then never mind.
Here, I heard it was really good.
Yeah, this is actually when I was contemplating, like, after watching this, and it's like, I should put that on the list, because again, it's very much, well, ScarJo being amazing.
They're just amazing.
Yeah. She's in it.
She's a computer voice,
That
isn't
one's,
she?
yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I think it's kind of got that there's a similar understated thing, but from what I remember, I think there's a bit more of a plot structure around it. It'd be interesting to see. I was going to ask if you'd seen it and how it compares, if that made a difference, but, well, clearly I can't ask that question.
You know me, all I watch is terrible foreign
Spooderman.
reality television. It's Spooderman.
Here's another interesting aspect, just thinking about, like, the film direction and such of the movie. Because it's Sophia Coppola who did it, I wonder if there's an aspect of making the film for some filmmakers as well. I mean, look at her family.
I mean, I'm just saying I agree Nicolas Cage would have been better Bob. 'Cause he's my
Apparently she
favorite
wouldn't-
Coppola.
Apparently she wouldn't do it if Bill Murray wasn't in.
I'm telling you, when a comedian does a serious role, it's always the best thing. Like, was it number 23? With
Yeah.
what's his
Gary?
name? Yeah, Gary.
Gary?
The one where Robin Williams is
1 Hour Photo.
just like
The one that really gets me for that, and this is important because I absolutely hate Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell films is Stranger Than Fiction.
I haven't seen that. Wait, what if? Hear me out. Will Ferrell, Spooderman. Spooderman.
Does whatever a spooder could.
No, it's a terrible movie. Or it's a terrible idea and it's a terrible joke. Well, I mean, some of it, when you
Um,
get someone who's more of a like a fish out of water actor kind of going into a comedic role, it doesn't end that well.
mm,
A good example of that is The Art of Self-Defense. Like Eisenberg, it's supposed to be a black comedy, but it's Eisenberg who's not funny in any
yeah,
aspect. Just
mm,
awkward.
yeah,
It doesn't go the other way. Whereas we know that most comedians, like, there is definitely a darkness to them.
yeah.
So
Well,
their ability to express, especially in thrill. Oof.
yeah. Well, you know why I think that works? Because like I'm thinking of another obvious comedian in a pretty dark, dramatic movie.
Hmm.
Um, Marlon Wayans in Requiem.
Yes. And I think that was the first time we kind of talked about this aspect. Like,
Yeah,
Wayans
yeah,
was the perfect role for that in Requiem, and I wouldn't want.
yeah. And I think comedy, you know, both comedy and horror, even though they're kind of they're seen as the lesser genres
Mm.
as well, right? It's a popcorn flick, or oh, you're just going for the cheap scares or whatever. And I don't think I think this is why comedians can work so well in dramatic roles. I mean, I guess Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense technically falls under that too, even though most people forget he was a comedian until since Die Hard. Um, it's there's a different level for having to hit the emotional beats right
Mm.
when you're in comedy or horror. Because if your timing is off, if you're not actually in the scene committed to it in the same way, it's going to fall flat unless we're looking at something like Jackass, where it's just meant to be that dumb comedy. The second you get into any type of comedy or horror that's actually trying for it, um, it's going to lend itself to the dramatic roles. And I think one of the big issues that happens with that, and why we don't see it near as much, is people get typecast. Again, I know we talked about this with Die Hard. They were afraid to put Bruce Willis on the poster because they knew everyone would see him as a comedian,
Hmm.
right? And until you break that role, you're kind of stuck there.
Well,
And
well, the thing, like, people forget about comedy. Like, you need that straight man too,
mhm,
um, especially in absurdist comedy,
mhm,
because the humor is in the juxtaposition of the absurd and the seemingly like super normal.
yeah,
So I think comedy is a whole lot more grounded than people actually give it credit for.
oh, completely. And that's exactly where I'm trying to go with that. And again, I think horror as well. Like they really are, because if you don't have those aspects and know how to play off them properly, you get scary movie.
I mean, like, we were discussing Scary Movie before we started
Yeah,
today. It's like Scary Movie is also something where you try to make a parody of a parody, and it's like I don't like any of those. No,
yeah,
it's over the top, and it's like say something, stop and stare at the camera for 30 seconds, wait for laughter.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, still better than Big Bang Theory, but
Well, I mean, it's a difference between like Big Bang Theory or like Scrubs and Community in the way they do their comedy. I mean, yeah, I guess I've seen several people from those go and do dramatic stuff as well. It's Alison Brie, for example, um, and yeah, there's definitely something there, and I think it helps bring the emotion to the story,
mhm.
even though it's not what you'd expect to see at all.
I guess with that, I think we've talked about all the talkable things. I hope Hope you got to express everything you wanted to about the film. Because I didn't poop on the film, but I feel like this was very Drew orientated. I mean, most people are Drew orientated, but you need to have your time to shine too. Dean. With that, this has been Beauty and the Beast Media Club. Join us at the next Media Club where we discuss the film Odyssey, or The Man from Nowhere. As always, if you like what we do, like, subscribe, or just join the conversation in the comments or at our Discord. Have a good one.